Hello, everybody. Welcome back into To The Point. Hope you're all doing well on this Tuesday. It is July 11th, and normally July 11th, not a whole lot to discuss, but we do have some topics today, some interesting ones around the world of sports. Wimbledon is ongoing. Watched some great women's matches this morning. We have a debacle at Northwestern University that I'm going to talk about today. If you haven't heard about the story, I have the details for you. So stay tuned for that and what's happened down there. Victor Wembanyama is done for the rest of Summer League. Don't blame the San Antonio Spurs one bit. We want to talk about his performance and just what's happening in San Antonio, an extension for the head coach. We have an NHL signing, but I want to start today with baseball. I discussed yesterday that I did not want to watch the home run derby. I don't like gimmicks. I don't enjoy all-star games. They're just not for me. Kids might like them. You see little kids in the outfield, they go and grab a ball. They have their place. But I did watch some of it last night. I watched 10 minutes. 10 whole minutes of the home run derby I tuned into last night. And I tuned into the right 10 minutes because I tuned in when Julio Rodriguez went for 41 homers in one round against Pete Alonso. And it was quite incredible. The crowd was going crazy. He couldn't miss. And he broke the record for most homers in a single round in the home run derby history, actually surpassing last night's champion, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. After that round, I did not watch the rest of it. I learned who won the home run derby this morning via Twitter. I did see the highlights this morning on the treadmill, so that's something, I suppose. I saw how it all went down. But it seemed like it was a good night for baseball. You had some personalities there. Vladdy was in the final against Randy Arozarena, who brings personality every time he's up to bat. I love Randy Arozarena. You had Julio Rodriguez, who's a future of the game. Mookie Betts, I think, hit 11 homers in his round against Vladdy. But he's still a stud, still one of the best players in baseball. So all in all, I think it was a positive night for MLB. It's cool that Vladdy and his father now have both won home run derbies. Vlad Sr. in 2007. So you have some history there, some family lineage. I learned last night a bunch of players had children. I did not know Vladdy Guerrero Jr. had a kid. He does. So I learned that last night. Interesting. Randy Arozarena had his cute little daughter with him when he won the second round. But Seattle seemed to enjoy the home run derby. There was a great crowd. The energy was there. I know the broadcasters were really into it, listening to that 10 minutes. So these are hit and misses. They just are. They can be great. They can be terrible. What I will say is baseball, I think, does the best of the gimmick all-star game type festivities. The NFL is the worst. The Pro Bowl is a joke. It's flag football. The NHL is not far behind. That's terrible as well. The skills competition gets worse every year as they add more and more stupid shit. But to me, baseball, this is something you do in a game. Again, it's a lob pitch, but we've all played lob baseball. You all would love to hit a dinger into the fourth row, hitting a dinger 440 yards. But the atmosphere seemed fun. Bo Bichette was a horrible interviewer. I saw that. That was not good. But again, you try stuff on the mothership. But all in all, I think it was a good night for baseball. I think everybody had fun. And that's the main point. Do I enjoy the home run derby? No, I never will. I'm not the audience. I'm not the demographic that they're seeking, which is fine. I shouldn't be everybody's demographic because I'm a grump who likes what he likes. But to me, would last night's event, would that have gotten people's attention and kept them on their couch? Yes. One thing I will say is I know the event went past 11 p.m. here Atlantic. It's too long. To me, that's too long for a home run derby. Started earlier. I believe the All-Star game starting a half hour earlier than the home run derby is tonight. I just want to get as much viewership as I can. And I understand it's a half hour behind in the States, so that would be an 8 p.m. start time. I get it. But if you can get this event done in 2 hours, which I think you should be able to, get it done in 2 hours. Like the games, baseball has been speeding things up. It's more interesting. Base running, the game is better than it used to be. And I think you can improve this home run derby because the wait between guys, you want to fill programming. But I think it almost went to 11:30 p.m. Atlantic here in New Brunswick. You want to get as much eyes, you want to get as much viewership as you possibly can. And I think for Canada, it doesn't hurt that Vladdy Guerrero Jr. wins the home run derby. Will that affect the Blue Jays' second half, and will he have his power back? I don't know. We've seen home run derbies completely cripple somebody's power. They go into the second half, they can't hit a home run. Now, Vladdy could hardly hit one in the first half, so maybe it'll be a Benjamin Button reversal effect on him. I don't know. To me, that has nothing to do with anything. Either your swing is good and you see the ball well and you're hitting the ball at the ballpark, or you don't. It's that simple to me. It's not, okay, I had a great home run derby. Now I'm going to go bat 400 and hit 30 home runs in the second half. To me, they're not correlated. They're not intertwined. But maybe he'll be great. Maybe Rosarena, who had a great first half, will have a great second half. Who knows? But overall, a good night for baseball. They got 10 minutes out of me. I doubt they'll get 10 minutes out of me tonight. But maybe I will. Maybe I will, because there won't be that much content today, and I'll need to talk about something tomorrow. I'll need to watch 10 minutes of the game and talk about how interesting it was. But good for baseball. I think baseball's had a good 6 months. Changes to the game, the overall talent, new personalities like Ella De La Cruz, and the entire Cincinnati Reds team, a lot of young players. Randy Rosarena, the Baltimore Orioles, how their team is built on draft picks and young talent. Baseball's in a good spot. Of course, the Aaron Judge, Mike Trout injuries don't help. But those guys are not big personalities anyway, so you miss seeing them hit monster home runs. But are they captivating? Are they guys that excite you to watch TV? Not really. Not really, because, again, to me, you need to be good on a mic. You need to be a good interview to be interesting, unless your play dictates it. Aaron Judge is the captain of the New York Yankees. To me, that means absolutely nothing. When it was announced he's the next captain surpassing Jeter, I could care less. I'm sure they care in the Bronx. I'm sure the New York Yankees fans care. I don't. I'm not a Yankees fan. I'm a fan of baseball. What does that mean to me? Great. Other teams don't have captains. They don't announce it publicly, so the Yankees do it like they're a holier-than-thou, better than everybody. Good for them. Win a World Series. It's been a minute since 2009, but again. But are those guys, to me, they will always have name value. Mike Trout and Aaron Judge. You want new faces to come through and to grab you by the shoulders to continue watching the sport. Which is why, in my opinion, Ellie De La Cruz should be at the All-Star game tonight, and he should be playing in it. He doesn't have to be a starter. He doesn't have to start for the National League. He's not warranted that yet. I get it. He's only been in the majors for 6 weeks. But in that 6 weeks, it's hard to argue anybody's had a bigger impact than him. Stealing second, stealing third, stealing home in 90 seconds. His home runs, his bat flips towards Davey Martinez and the Washington Nationals. He's got personality, he's got flair, he's young, and he doesn't know what he doesn't know. But you're saying tonight, let's say it's in the middle of the game, the National League is down a run. And for instance, trying to think of a slow batter I don't even know who's starting for the National League. Let's say Matt Olson of the Braves, first baseman, hits a single, and you're in the bottom of the ninth, and you need a pinch runner. What if Ellie De La Cruz could come out? What if it's earlier in the game and you bring him on and he gets to play 3-4 innings? Fans in Seattle get to see Ellie De La Cruz. Seattle, Cincinnati, not close, but you also got a national television audience. Then you go, well, who's Cincinnati? Who are the Cincinnati Reds? You could argue in 2019, when Vladdy Guerrero Jr. was the home run derby runner-up, that was his coming out party. He was young, yes, you know the name Vladimir Guerrero Sr., but that doesn't mean just because you have a last name of an all-time great that you're going to be any good. That doesn't mean you're going to be a star. Ken Griffey Jr., we do see it, but there's a lot of flops as well. He had that opportunity. He finished as the runner-up, and it's helped his career. De La Cruz has played 6 weeks. The Cincinnati Reds are better than they've been in nearly a decade. And what if he could be out there? What if he could play a few innings? Have an impact on the game? Have him interviewed during the game? Something creative. They did this last year for Pujols and Miguel Cabrera. Two legends, two guys who will be in Cooperstown that were not at the top of their game anymore. Miguel primarily. But they made concessions for those guys. I think you can make concessions for younger talent. In the NHL, if Sidney Crosby doesn't want to go to the All-Star game, he shouldn't have to go. He shouldn't have to go. What if you could, this year, put Connor Bedard in the All-Star game, if he isn't an All-Star, but you put him in there anyway. You put Leo Carlsson if he makes the team, Adam Fantilli. I'm just talking about rookies. There's a rookie showcase game often that nobody gives a shit about. It might sound like an oversimplification, but it isn't. Nobody gives a shit about it. Nobody watches it. It's normally not on TV. You got to go out of your way to find it. So it might as well be on the moon. Might as well be on the moon because nobody's watching it and nobody cares. But if old players don't want to go to an All-Star game, like this year in the NHL, in freezing Toronto in February, don't make them go. Have the future talent, the players that will be in the game for the next 20 years, hopefully, go showcase. Strut their stuff. Showcase your future. Your past and present will remain. But what does the league have to look forward to in the next 20 to 30 years? What do we have on the horizon? We got Ellie De La Cruz. We saw Adley Rutschman last night, one of the best catchers in baseball, hitting both sides, I believe. He hit from the left and the right side. Great. Love it. Love that for him. But is there any way to get even more talent at these events? Pigeonhole them in. Who cares? Baltimore has called up 3 prospects from their farm system. Have them involved somehow. 2 things. Baltimore is a damn good baseball team. They're on the come up, and if it wasn't for the Rays being so good in April and May, The Orioles would be even a bigger story in their 2-year turnaround to being a powerhouse in the American League. But their front prospects, Garrett Henderson, put him in the game. Have him involved somehow. I just think there's opportunities to do it because we see every year. And I complain about the All-Star game more than anybody. But I'm trying to find solutions to even make it better. And baseball's got the best product for an All-Star game. But how many people in Toronto this year are going to the All-Star game to see Sidney Crosby? Not that many. They'll need to fix their game, primarily. But if you have the future stars of tomorrow come out and play, do it. Have them there. Owen Power, have him at the All-Star game. These guys that are young and maybe are not All-Star worthy, but you make concessions because you can. Because if you poll half the players, they don't want to be there. So by acknowledging that, get the players in there, and it's not going to be a no from the youngsters because it'll be their first All-Star game, and they want to show up and show out. They don't want jersey sales. They don't want to be talk of the town, to have some flair about them. They want that. They want that publicity. They want to be a household name. They want to be remembered. They want to be put on a map. This would provide that opportunity to get a jump start on you having a great career and having fans for many years to come. The All-Star game tonight, starting pitchers Garrett Cole and Zach Gallen of the Arizona Diamondbacks. Both have been great. Now, the problem with baseball, even with the National League, there's not a whole lot of household names. Who's the Braves' best pitcher? Well, I know it's Spencer Strider, but does the average fan know that? Does the average fan know that Spencer Strider is very good? I think it's smart for Garrett Cole deserves to start this game, but I think it's also smart that he is because he's a Yankee, so you have that publicity. But Zach Gallen pitching in Arizona, I don't mind this decision because he's playing for a team that's tied for a divisional lead, one of the biggest surprise stories at the halfway point, and tell that story tonight. Fox, John Schmaltz, Joe Davis, I believe, does it with him. Tell that story. Ken Rosenthal on the sideline. Talk about what's happening. If I was running the coverage tonight, it would be less about Zach Gallen and his great curveball or Garrett Cole and his ability to catch guys on the corner. Can talk about Zach Gallen and the Diamondbacks, their trades, what they've done, what they've accomplished so far, where they were just a year ago, to gain interest. Then when a reliever comes in who plays for the Marlins, just for instance, talk about the Marlins. The Marlins are on pace to win over 90 games. The Marlins have had the best month and a half stretch in baseball. Luis Arias is nearly batting 400. You can go through this and talk about the negative stories too, because those are fun. You got to go negative. You have a Met up to bat, talk about the Mets. Talk about how big of a mess the New York Mets have been so far. Talk about the Padres. Talk about Baltimore. You have an ability to tell stories about your season to a wider audience. It's on Fox tonight. Baseball is popular, but you're on a national platform where you can distribute information about your sport to everybody because people need something to watch over the next month and change before the NFL comes back. So knowing that, why not go ahead and say, you know what? we're going to get people interested in the Miami Marlins, to give them a second thought, interested in watching the Padres, interested in watching the race down the stretch between the Texas Rangers and the Houston Astros. And of course, there's the Shohei Ohtani storyline, which usurps everything. But if you can get a couple fans to come out tonight that watch the All-Star game, and they leave going, you know what, I kind of want to watch the Cincinnati Reds, or the Marlins are an interesting story, or can Toronto catch Tampa, the American League East, whatever it might be, that would be my approach. Because yes, you want to create stars, check, but you also want to create interest in your league as you go towards the last 2.5 months before the playoffs. Because the Angels are unlikely to make the playoffs again. So that's no Ohtani, that's no Mike Trout. Are the Yankees going to make the playoffs in the American League? Maybe. I don't think it's a lock by any means. They're battered with injuries. Their pitching staff is below average. If you miss the Yankees in the postseason, that's tough. The Red Sox going to make it? So that's 3 huge brands right there with players and just name value. Are the Dodgers going to go deep? Who knows? But you need to have the ability in the postseason to draw ratings, to draw interest. If people see that the Marlins and the Reds are playing, normally you look at that and say, I'm not going to tune in. But why should I tune in? Because you got these players, because you have interest, you have a storyline. It's a new wave of playoff teams where baseball, for the longest time, one of their biggest problems is you have the same postseason teams, and it's mundane and it's boring, and the teams who spend a whole lot of money are just succeeding. This year, it's the polar opposite. I went through this last week. 4 of the top 7 payrolls in baseball are outside a postseason position at the All-Star break. That's crazy. It goes against every notion that we have. In hockey, the big brands, the the Rangers, the Habs, the Leafs fans, they all complain about the hard salary cap. We can't spend. Looking at this, the teams that are spending in baseball are going nowhere fast. The Marlins have the 2nd lowest payroll in baseball, and they are in the first wild card position. The Rays have the 3rd lowest payroll in baseball. They are in the top spot in the American League. It's completely a role reversal, not what you'd expect. But it's true. Does spending money help you? Sure. If you spend it wisely. Baseball doesn't have a cap, so you can just spend. I'll tell you, the teams that are spending in 2023 are regretting it because they are stuck. They're in a bad position. They're not winning. But Garrett Cole versus Zach Gallen tonight in Seattle, MLB All-Star game. Looking at baseball at the All-Star break, there's good and bad stories. I mentioned Cincinnati. It's a really good story. Ellie De La Cruz, Tyler Friedl, Joey Votto coming back, hitting 7 home runs in his first 16 games since coming off the injured reserve. The Marlins, Luis Arias, Jorge Soler, the young pitcher Cruz, who's fantastic. The Baltimore Orioles. To me, the interesting thing is how many of these great stories hold up in the second half. How many will have a season that is actually great? Because if these teams have a great first half and they miss the postseason, you remember the All-Star game, you remember how that felt, but it's not quite as successful. It's not quite as memorable. But the Reds didn't make the postseason last year. The Marlins didn't, and neither did Baltimore. Those three teams did. I did not, pardon me. How many will this year? If you even look at this chart, division leaders, Tampa Bay, they made the postseason last year. Texas did not. Cleveland did. Wild card, Baltimore, no. Toronto, yes. Houston, yes. Outside looking in, you have the Yankees, who trail by 1 game. The Boston Red Sox, who trail by 2. They did not make the postseason. And you have Seattle, trailing by 4, who did make the postseason. The National League, Atlanta, yes. LA, yes. Cincinnati, no. The Marlins, no. Arizona, no. San Francisco, no. 4 of the 6 currently in the National League did not make the postseason at the All-Star break. San Diego did. They're nowhere close. They're 6 out. The Mets did. 7 games out, nowhere close. The St. Louis Cardinals, 11 out. They won their division last year, going away. So how many of these stories hold up? The Marlins are in a good spot currently. They have a 3-game lead for a wild card spot. But they play in the National League East. The Atlanta Braves already have 60 wins. Best team in baseball. The Marlins have to contend with the Phillies, who are on the rise. They're a half game out of the final wild card spot. So you got to play the Braves, you got to play the Phillies, and them pesky Mets. Who knows where they're going? So to me, if the Marlins were to make the postseason, that would be one of the most impressive things, just because of the division alone. Luis Arraez batting .383, Jorge Soler 23 home runs, Jazz Chisholm has hardly played, and yet he's on the cover of MLB The Show, and he's one of the most well-known players on the team. And they have 11 players on the injured list currently. Arizona is tied with the Dodgers for top spot in the National League West. Their rookie Corbin Carroll is batting near .300, leads the team in home runs. Also leads the team in stolen bases. And they have Zach Gallen, who's starting the All-Star game tonight. What do the Diamondbacks have in front of them? They got a difficult schedule. They got to play the Blue Jays this weekend. You have to contend with the Dodgers. San Francisco is just a few games behind you. They're still a playoff caliber team. Maybe they sell off. Maybe they trade away some pieces. The Rockies are no real threat. Then there's the Padres, who I think will be competitive all year long. AJ Preller, I don't see him as a seller. It might be the smart thing to do, but I don't think he's going to do it. He's not trading Tatis. He's not trading Manny Machado. He's not trading Joe Musgrove. Does he trade Josh Hader, one of the best closers in baseball? He can get a lot of prospects for him. Do they trade Blake Snell, who's had a good last couple weeks? Padres have decisions to make. I don't think they'll trade people off. I think they want to be competitive down the stretch, and I think the Padres could be a team that are 6 games out currently that can make the playoffs. Because I don't view San Francisco as a playoff caliber team. They've had an incredible start. They've been at another really good story on a team that's full of kind of veteran guys that are not all that good, but yet they're 8 games above 500, and you can't take that away from them. But San Francisco doesn't have a whole lot in their team that scares you. I view Philadelphia as a better team than San Francisco. I think Milwaukee, who's a half game behind San Francisco, is a better team than them. And I think San Diego can make up ground if they really want to. So those three teams, if I look at the wildcard teams in the National League currently, I'm going to predict that the Marlins make the postseason, even though I think their division is tough. And I know their schedule in August is like murderer's row. They have to play the Dodgers. They got to go to San Diego. They're going to play the Braves that month. So they got a lot to contend with. They're in Baltimore this weekend, which is not an easy series to come out of an All-Star break. But I think there's something about this team. They already have 53 wins. I don't know if they'll be the first wildcard team, but I think they make it. Arizona, I do not. I think they're a really good story. I think they're on the come up. They may be the Orioles of last year, where the Orioles just missed out. The Blue Jays stayed in front of them. You had the Rays who won the division. You had the Yankees in front. The Yankees won the division. Pardon me. You had the Rays who stayed in front of them. So I think Arizona will be competitive all year long. It'll be a positive season because players like Gabriel Moreno, Gurriel Jr., Corbin Carroll, Christian Walker will all be positive signs, and you have good pitching going into future seasons and a low payroll. But I think the division is tough. I think the Padres are going to surge, and I just think the Dodgers are a better team already. And although the Dodgers are missing out on multiple pitchers, Walker Buehler's done for the year. Dustin May is done for the year. Syndergaard hasn't pitched in a month. He's on the IL. Syndergaard is on the IL. I think they will be aggressive at the trade deadline. Perhaps they acquire Shohei Ohtani. I doubt it. I think he stays in Anaheim, but I wouldn't rule it out. And the Dodgers have a great farm system. I like Arizona. I don't know if they can make it up. I don't see it. San Francisco, I also don't see making the postseason. I think Arizona has a better chance than San Francisco. To me, the Philadelphia Phillies, who had a horrible start, they had injuries. I mean, they were in the position of the Florida Panthers, but they had a lot of injuries. Bryce Harper didn't play for a month and a half, and they needed to find guys to fill in. Trey Turner had an awful start. He admitted that. He's starting to play better baseball. I mean, for Christ's sake, Taijuan Walker leads this team in wins. He's about the fourth or fifth starter. Aaron Nola starting to find his game. Nick Castellanos is batting .300. It'll be tough because this year the Marlins are a hell of a lot better than they were last year. But to me, the Phillies are a playoff caliber team, and they will make the postseason. The Milwaukee Brewers are trailing Cincinnati by a few games. They have a few games in hand, to be fair. Milwaukee missed the postseason last year, and it was a disaster. They sold at the deadline, but they still thought they could make the playoffs. They did not. They have another series against the Reds this weekend. They've been playing each other a lot lately. Christian Yelich is playing like vintage Christian Yelich. He's playing great. This team is a weird team. You really don't know what their strengths are, what they're great at. But to me, they are a good team. They may want to add at the trade deadline. Cincinnati has the flair about them with Elly De La Cruz, with Joey Votto, with Senzel in right field. They got good pitching. But I'm going to say Cincinnati does win their division because I just love watching Elly De La Cruz play. But look at the situation at the National League. I'm going to do this for the American League in a minute. Atlanta will win the National League East. No discussion. To me, the Dodgers will win the National League West. Cincinnati, it's difficult because they do have competition. But to me, they will win the National League Central. So all the division winners will stay the same. The Marlins will make the playoffs. They will get in there. I don't know what seed they are in the wild card, but they will make it. They'll be one of the three. Arizona will miss. I will switch them out with the Philadelphia Phillies. And the Phillies are dangerous. If they get into the postseason again, they could go deep. And I'm going to flip San Francisco and the San Diego Padres. The Padres need a lot to go right. They're trailing by 6 games. But every year in baseball, there seems to be a team who's out of it by 6, 7 games, and they find a way in. They find a way to make the postseason. You didn't expect it. They had a horrible outlook on their team, but they stayed the course, and they get in. To me, that'll be the Padres. They had Tatis with his PED suspension. Musgrove didn't have a great start. You had Soto, who was horrible for 2.5 months. Machado has his lowest batting average at this point of the season in his career. Bogarts has been a disappointment in that signing. They have Gary Sanchez catching every day. He's been DFA'd by 2 teams. Rougned Odor is playing everyday minutes. With all that being said, I expect Juan Soto to have a really good second half. He is one of the best hitters in baseball. He's one of the best players in baseball. Eventually, skill wins out. Tatis has actually been really good. If he can continue that, they're in good shape. Machado is too damn good of a player to continue his slide. And if you look at this staff with Musgrove and with Snell, they have some good pitchers in San Diego. They have to battle through teams. They have to jump Milwaukee currently. They have to jump Philly. They have to jump San Francisco. I think they do it. I could definitely be wrong because they have to play the Dodgers and they have to play San Francisco in their own division. Playoff caliber teams down the stretch. I don't think the Mets will be that team that surprises people. I think they're too old and I don't think they have enough talent. I think it's going to be the Padres. We'll see what happens with them, but that's my outlook for the American League going into the second half. National League, I just said American League. The American League. Tampa Bay currently only has a 2-game lead in the American League East over the Baltimore Orioles. Baltimore has 4 games in hand on Tampa. Tampa had such a hot start. And they still lead Toronto by 7 games, and New York by 8, and Boston by 9. But they've fallen off a bit. They hit the skids. They lost 8 of 9, and they won a game right before the All-Star break over the Braves to give them some confidence. But they had everything go right for them. They were hitting everything. They were getting fans showing up to the ballpark, which never happens in Tampa. They have a Rosarena at the All-Star game. They have Paredes at the All-Star game. Wander Franco at the All-Star. They have a ton of representatives from that team, which rightfully so. They've been fantastic. But can you keep up that pace? Can you keep up that momentum? I worry about that. Yandy Diaz at the All-Star game, so I forgot about him. Shane McClanahan has 11 wins. He's had some problems as of late. Now, I think they're going to make the playoffs because I just think they've had such a good start that it would be such a historic collapse if they do not. But to me, the Baltimore Orioles are the looming threat. Their pitching is their biggest weakness. Their best pitcher is Kyle Gibson. He's not a great pitcher. Their pitching has been average all year long. They outscore their problems. Anthony Santander, Austin Hayes, Henderson, Ryan Mountcastle. This team just scores runs. They hit homers, and they bludgeon you to death. Their last win on Sunday was a 15-2 win over a team that's looking to make the postseason in Minnesota. They got Aaron Hicks off waivers from the Yankees. He's been a good pickup. It just seems everything that they do seems to work, and they don't spend a whole lot of money. I believe they should be a team at the trade deadline that should be looking at pitching. I don't know if they will because they have such a small payroll. And yes, they're in a good position, but do they have enough faith in the team to spend? Not to mention, you have the Toronto Blue Jays, who are 5 back of Baltimore, but Toronto has better pitching. They have the home run derby champion. They have Bo Bichette, who leads the entire baseball in hits. The Blue Jays, have I said all along, should be better than what their record says they are, and they're starting to play like it. Can Alek Manoah return to form? They have a healthy rotation. Where does Hyun-Jin Ryu fit in when he returns from injury? The American League East is a difficult one. But at the end of the day, I'm going to stick with the Rays to win that division. I want to say Baltimore, but I just don't trust their pitching enough down the stretch to be enough. I do think the Rays will start to play better baseball, and ultimately they will win that division. American League West. Texas are a lot like the Rays. Incredibly hot start, and half their team is at the damn All-Star game. And it's not really hyperbolic. Marcus Semien, check. Corey Seager, check. Young, check. Adolis Garcia, check. I'm missing another name from that group. Those are 4 guys. Seager, Semien. They must have a pitcher too. But they have, I think, 8 representatives. I remember, Lau is there, the first baseman. Mitch Garver might be there, the catcher. He's had a good year. But I think they have 8 representatives throughout their entire team. It's really impressive. But yet, throughout that first half, they only have a 2-game lead in the National League West over the Houston Astros. Houston didn't have a great start. They're starting to play better baseball. They've gone through the injury bug, winning the World Series. You saw Yordan Alvarez. We've seen Jose Altuve make 3 different stints on the IL. Alex Bregman, Christian Javier. So it's been patchwork. They have the most innings in baseball by rookie pitchers. But Houston this is when they play well. You get towards postseason time, this team finds a way to put themselves in a good spot. Now, Texas is the real deal. I firmly believe that. They're a very good ball club. They spend a lot of money. They should be good, by the way. That's another thing. You don't hear that enough. Texas is really good. Well, look at their payroll. Look what they're giving out to players. They should be pretty good. They're spending a lot of money on talent. As much as I think Texas is a very good team, you can't put a price on experience. And to me, the Houston Astros are going to win the National League West. They are going to get bodies back. They will make a move at the trade deadline that is under the radar. They got Verlander a few years back and won the World Series. Well, that and trash cans. That won't be the move, but is there a pitcher? There's a pitcher out there that nobody would covet. They'll pick up and he'll be great. They need to. Because I believe that team believes that they can win a World Series again. which is appropriate thinking. Because Texas, this group has never been in the postseason. Tampa was out in the first round last year. Toronto's never been past a wild card game. The New York Yankees, you beat them the year before. Need I go on? Who are you scared of in the American League? I think the Braves are a huge walking billboard threat in the National League. I don't see a team like that in the American League. That's why the Blue Jays, that's why Baltimore, these teams could get hot and go all the way. But to me, Texas will not be the division winner at the end of the year. It will be the Houston Astros. That's change. Cleveland leads the American League Central with a record of 45-45. Minnesota trails them by one game with a record of 45-46. So it's a real dogfight in that division. Neither team is very good. The Twins just got swept by the Baltimore Orioles, including losing 15-2. Carlos Correa has been a disaster. Byron Buxton hasn't been very good. Their pitching has actually been their strength. Joe Ryan's been very good. But is Minnesota a team that you're afraid of? Not really. Neither is Cleveland. Josh Naylor, the Canadians, been great. They have Jose Ramirez, who is still at the top of his game. Jimenez, one of the best closers, and Emmanuel Clase. But Stephen Kwan hasn't been as good as the year before. Tristan McKenzie is on the IL. To me, this division is going to come down right down to the wire. But I'm going to go with Cleveland to win their division because to me, Terry Francona knows how to do it. To me, Josh Naylor's just a clutch hitter. He finds a way to get big hits. Jose Ramirez might be my favorite player in baseball. Neither team would scare me. I'd love to see either team in the postseason. The Boston Red Sox, just to put this in perspective, would be leading the American League Central by many games. But that's not how it works. You win your division, you make the postseason. Cleveland or Minnesota is going to make the postseason. I'm going to go with Cleveland because I trust what they're doing down there. So wildcard teams, what changes? To me, the Baltimore Orioles, they missed out last year. They make the playoffs this year. They're too good a team. They have incredible hitters. I do think they'll add something at the trade deadline, but either way, they are a behemoth. They're a great team. They're in. The Blue Jays will make the playoffs. They're just too talented. Their pitching is starting to come together. I mentioned the Padres in the National League. If the Blue Jays won the American League East, it wouldn't stun me. It wouldn't stun me because this team has what it needs to be a competitive group. I think they need another middle infielder. They need some depth. I don't want to play Kevin Biggio or Santiago Espinal every other day. To me, that's not a winning formula. Could you find a piece from the Tigers or from the White Sox that you could add to your team? Sure. Is Tim Anderson available from the White Sox to play shortstop for your team? Would the White Sox trade him? Bo Bichette would have to move to, or maybe he'd play second base. But that would really improve your infield. You can look around, make some decisions, find teams that are looking to sell and acquire some pieces. But I think Toronto makes it. I mentioned Houston wins the division. So to me, it's Seattle, Boston, New York. You have Texas. Texas has 8 All-Stars. It's impressive stuff. I don't think the Red Sox aren't good enough to make the postseason. They're better than I thought they'd be at this point. I think they'll fall off. The Seattle Mariners are the sleeping giant for me. They're 4 back. They've had a slow start. To me, they were an obvious playoff team before the year started. It just hasn't gone their way. They lost Robbie Ray at the beginning of the year. He's a starting pitcher that they relied on. They don't have him. George Kirby's been really good. Luis Castillo has been very good. Oddly enough, Teoscar Hernandez, former Blue Jay, leads them in home runs. They've had a tough start to the year. But like the National League, I see a big swing. I don't think the Yankees make the postseason. I don't. I just don't think their team's good enough. When's Aaron Judge coming back? We don't know. So I'm not buying that stock. I'm shorting that stock. I think the Yankees missed the postseason. I think Seattle is going to pass Texas, and the wild card teams in the American League are going to be Baltimore, Toronto, and Seattle, in that order. To me, Seattle, there's just something about that team that I'm not giving up on them. I like that group. They made the postseason last year. They made that huge comeback against the Blue Jays. They still have really good bats on that team. They're young. They're a fun group. And it's a long ways out right now. But if the Angels sell off, you have an easier matchup. You get to play Oakland in your division, who are not good. You do have to contend with Houston and Texas. I agree with that. But they just took 3 or 4 from the Houston Astros this past weekend. So they've proven that they can play with some of the best teams in baseball. There's something about Texas, something about Mary. There's something about Texas for me that I just believe that they have what it takes, like the Padres, playoff teams last year, to climb themselves back into a position to compete for the World Series. Could be completely foolish. It may not happen. That's just me pontificating. That's just me looking at the situation, watching a lot of baseball to this point, and looking at the options. But I look at the middle teams. Like if you looked at good, I put good, bad, and ugly. Cincinnati's a great story at this point. Marlins, Baltimore, bad. Cardinals, biggest in baseball. Mets, Padres, and you have the teams in the middle. Houston, Toronto, Texas, the Dodgers. Houston and Toronto are huge threats. And I think you could argue Houston and Toronto are as scary a team in the American League as anybody else. Kevin Gausman said last weekend, and it came off poorly because they were being shelled at the time, and he said teams are afraid to play us. And then Ross Atkins said it, he reiterated that point on Overdrive last week, and he does his best in interviews to say nothing, to come off as a drone, to come off as a guy with no personality. But he put that in there, and I heard him. He said, teams are afraid to play us in the American League. That might not be true. It could be completely false. But if your team believes that other teams are afraid to play you, sometimes that's all that matters. Sometimes it's your perception in life. Who cares what other people think of you? You have to like yourself before you can even think about going forward in life. That's a struggle we all have. I've struggled with that myself. There's tons of times in my life I hate myself. I hate what I'm doing. I hate, what I look like, this, that, or the other. You got to find that. That's the fight on a daily basis, is to believe in yourself to go forward. For the Blue Jays, if they already have that belief inside, in the clubhouse, that nobody in the American League can beat us, or in the American League, there's no team that we fear, then I think, unless it's contrived, you're in a really good position. You're in a spot where you have the upper hand over a lot of different teams. I think Houston has that same belief because of what they've done in the past. because of what they've accomplished as that core group. And they deserve to have that right because they've accomplished it. But there needs to be a team to dethrone the champs. The Oilers, Mark Messier says this in his book, it took time for the Oilers to believe that they could beat the Islanders. When they lost, when the Islanders won their 4th title in a row, he said that year, we didn't beat them, but when that series was over, we knew we could. And that was the springboard into the future success. Into saying, you know what? Yeah, this team is good, but we're better than them now. We can hang with this team. They are good, but we are better. And I think that is what is happening if the Blue Jays have that perspective in the American League. They're dangerous. Because they can look at the Seattles, they can look at Texas, they can look at Baltimore in the division or the Yankees. And I think the way they look at this start is we didn't have a great first half on paper, but we're ahead of the Yankees. We've been a healthy team all year long. We haven't missed a start from a starting pitcher other than Manoah, who was a gas can. That's it. We haven't had to spot start anybody. We haven't had any of those issues. Houston, for Christ's sake, has the most innings pitched by rookies in baseball, and they have the same record. So that's why these two teams can have the Cavalier attitude. The National League is completely different to me because the Dodgers are a good team, but the Dodgers are here, and they look up at the Braves at the top of the beanstalk, Jack and the Bean, they see him up there because the Braves are so effing good. The Braves are head and shoulders above every other team in baseball. Now, they were better than most last year. They got to the postseason. They couldn't win. I think they're better this year than they were last year. And I picked them to win the World Series before the season started, and I picked them to beat Houston. But to me, it was between Houston or the Blue Jays. It was one or the other. I said it in jest. But the Blue Jays have everything you'd want in a team. They got pitching, they got bats, they got flair. What else do you want in your ball club? And that's me being honest. I get sick of the Blue Jays because they're on TV every night. I don't want to watch them every game. That's why I get paid for shit. But could the Blue Jays end up World Series champions in 2023 as we said here at the All-Star break? Wouldn't surprise me. Because you get to the World Series, you got a 50-50 chance. And they need to win in the postseason. They need to prove it, which they haven't yet. But to me, they have that belief that they can. They're even younger than the Blue Jays, and their pitching isn't as good. And pitching is more important in the postseason than hitting. Because the hits seem to drive, you need the pitches. You need pitchers to get outs for you. And Baltimore has a really good back end of their bullpen. A good back end of their bullpen doesn't mean fuck all if you don't have a lead. If you don't have a lead going into a 7th, 8th, 9th inning, those three great guys might as well not have fucking arms. Might as well be gimps walking around because they're no value to you. But that's the baseball roundup. All-Star game this evening. Garrett Cole versus Zach Gallen. American League versus National League. That's also smart. The NHL division stuff, 3-on-3. God, so bad. So bad at what they do and what they choose to be. That Major League Baseball is beating you in public relations and branding. That's when you know you're in a deep pit of despair. It's going to be tough to get out. Quickly to tennis. This morning, the women's matches are done, and we got 2 upsets. World number 4, Jessica Pegula, and world number 1, Iga Swiatek, are out at the All England Club. Alina Svitolina and Marketa Vondrousova, 2 unranked women, are through to the semifinals. Svitolina had a child 6 months ago. She's playing the best tennis of her life. Vondrousova is through to her first career major semi. 2 great matches, by the way. I would argue that the women's matches have been better than the men at Wimbledon thus far. Now, there were some good matches yesterday. Holger Rune and Grigor Dimitrov was fantastic Monday afternoon. But Swiatek's last 2 matches were great. Svitolina's last 2 matches were great, obviously. Jessica Pegula's always seems to be in a fight in her matches. She gives up points. But now you get 2 unranked women who have the opportunity to play to get into their first career major final. Svitolina has a 3-2 head-to-head record, but they haven't played against one another since summer of 2020 at the Olympics, which Vondrousova won 6-3, 6-1. To me, the Svitolina story, it's compelling for a number of reasons. She had a child 6 months ago. She made a run at the French to the quarterfinal, to the round of 16, and now she gets to the semifinal at Wimbledon. She's a crowd favorite, and she's from the Ukraine. And whether that wants to become a story or you don't want it to become a story, it is a story. She's from Ukraine. She's played women from Russia. They don't shake hands. Well, she doesn't really want to shake their hand. The fans booed Victoria Azarenka, who's from Belarus, following their round of 16 match, which was really uncalled for me. You're talking about people from England who hold themselves in such high esteem. Royal family, all that dignity. India, London's so great. England's so great. Ugh, stuffy people over there. But probably never welcome over there. But I don't really want to go anyway. But it's a storyline that she's from Ukraine. There's an ongoing war. She's playing against Russians. The Russians are not allowed to have their flag represented on the TV screen, which is interesting. She defeats a woman from Belarus. She defeated 2 women from Russia at the French Open. She's had to answer questions in the media. It's a whole big thing. But to me, her tennis speaking for itself. She's confident on the court. She can play long. She's playing 3-set matches, getting close to 3 hours. She still has the stamina. It's phenomenal. And you have a number 1 and number 4 seed bounced out. It's completely wide open in that half of the draw. Tomorrow morning, it'll be Madison Keys against Aryna Sabalenka, Jabber against Rybakina. So 2 women that have won majors in the last year. A woman who's been a major finalist, and Madison Keys, who was a finalist a long time ago. But it's a lot more interesting now, for sure. Seeing how close these matches are, seeing the Svitolina run. The women's draw has been fascinating. So, great matches this morning. Pegula is out. The men are ongoing. Novak Djokovic is playing this afternoon against Andrei Rublev of Russia. You have Yannick Sinner playing Safulin, another Russian. Safulin is unranked. He's got the biggest opportunity of his life. Sinner's looking to get to his first career major semi. which would be a big deal for him. Obviously, going up against Novak Djokovic will be a big underdog if Djokovic is to win. But nonetheless, pardon me, we'll see what happens then. But incredible action at the All England Club. We'll watch the match this afternoon, and the women's draw, we'll react to it tomorrow morning. Let's go to NCAA football. Football does not start, college football, for another month and a half. There's an early game in Ireland, Dublin, that they do every year now. So that will be at the end of August between Notre Dame and Navy. But a team that played in that game last year was Northwestern. They played against Nebraska. They beat Nebraska in Dublin. It turned out to be their only win of the season, as the Northwestern Wildcats, led by Pat Fitzgerald, had an awful season. But Pat Fitzgerald is a former former Northwestern Wildcat. He's led the program to 2 Big Ten championship games. And he's regarded as one of the brightest coaches in college football. They pay him good money to stay. He's been lured at by other programs, but nothing's come of it. He's staying at Northwestern. Here's the deal. 6 months ago, Northwestern hired an independent contractor, which means that they hired people that they like, to do an investigation into reports of hazing within the program. If you're not familiar with hazing, it's basically, you could label it as bullying. You could label it as making people do things that they wouldn't want to do, and just picking on rookies. And it's just a culture that can be unbecoming to some. So they looked into it, this independent, and this was reported by the Northwestern Journal, so journalists at Northwestern. And Northwestern has some of the smartest students in the country. So what this committee, independent contractor, not really, found out was that, yes, there was hazing in the program, but that head coach Pat Fitzgerald did not know about it. He was unaware of what was happening within the program, but he might have learned about it and didn't do enough, didn't come forward with it quickly enough. So they gave him a 2-week suspension. That was what was accepted. 2 weeks, Pat Fitzgerald. But it's not a 2-week suspension during the season. It's a 2-week suspension right now, in the middle of July, where players have not reported yet. There is no football. So really, it's a 2-week suspension. That's a joke of a suspension because he's not there anyway. Nobody's on campus. He can't coach. But we thought that was the end of the story. It is not. Not the end of the story. This week, former players spoke to the journalists at Northwestern and 2 independent sources at the university, revealed that of hazing within the football program, and days after an independent investigation, he said it was widespread, this hazing, including players that were forced to perform sexual acts, players who were forced to run naked past offensive linemen when they're basically in the position to hike the football, and having to do things that they weren't comfortable with. Investigation said 11 current or former players told investigators hazing had been ongoing, and he mentioned a new report from Monday where more former players confirmed hazing was systemic, dating back many years. Schill said nudity, forced participation, and sexualized acts of a degrading nature were part of the hazing. While he said some players didn't think the hazing was harmful, he said others viewed it as causing significant harm with long-term consequences. Then Schill, the athletic director, said this: the head coach is ultimately responsible for the culture of his team. The hazing we investigated was widespread and clearly not a secret within the program, providing Coach Fitzgerald with the opportunity to learn what was happening. Either way, the culture in Northwestern football, while incredible in some ways, was broken in others. So, Pat Fitzgerald was fired yesterday. Northwestern did not want to fire Pat Fitzgerald. As I mentioned, he's an alum. You get to two Big Ten title games in the Big Ten. It's impressive. Yes, you had a horrible year, but he's loved there, and you don't want to fire him. But this is happening. So, I think this is a big issue. I think this is a huge story, and I wanted to bring it up on the show to have a nuanced conversation. Where does everybody fall on this? Kids, which is what these players are, student athletes, students to be the correct name for them, are children. You're 18 years old, you're going into college, you're 19, 20, 21. We all do stupid stuff when we're that age. Hazing has been a part of sports since ever. It's been around for a very long time. It's always been a part of it. It's not something that is popular. It's not something that I think was ever great, but it's happened. It's like bullying. It's always going to be a part of life in one shape, form, or another. I truly believe that. Now, what was alleged, having performed sexual acts, having to do degrading things, doesn't sound like a fun environment. And going into this, it doesn't sound great either. Now, I think if Pat Fitzgerald, if a player came up to him and he was told about this, and he did nothing about it, that would warrant significant punishment to him. To me, that is similar to what happened in Chicago at the whole Kyle Beach. If you know something and do nothing about it, you are culpable. You deserve blame, and whatever happens to you is fair game. He is the coach. He sets the culture. So in a way, you do set boundaries for your team. You do set standards. I'm sure his argument would be with that. That just is what happens on the field, the way we practice, the way we play. What happens when they leave the locker room is not my doing, which is a fair point in a way. To me, I worry about this particular firing when it comes to cancel culture, when it comes to just the overall way that the world is working right now, where you are guilty until proven innocent, and you are harshly judged for something that may or may not be your fault. Pat Fitzgerald has fault in this story, no doubt about it. But is he the most culpable? Is he the biggest culprit? I don't think so. I think that's the players and the older players who allowed this to happen. And if a player didn't go speak to the coach directly, I don't know how he's supposed to know that. You know, you could look around and get a feel of your team, and you have a 1-11 season, and if the mood, if the feeling is really poor, maybe you can sniff something out and you kibosh it. But to me, he's being fired for allowing this to happen on his watch. And yes, that's true. It did happen on his watch. But what was the worst part of this story, I guess, is my thought here. I don't see a true reason for Pat Fitzgerald to be fired. And again, I want to make it really clear. If he knew about this, yes, fire him. Fire him, because then he should be fired, because you allowed this to happen. He told ESPN on Friday he was not aware of the alleged incidents. He had no knowledge of any hazing. In a statement, Fitzgerald said he was surprised when I learned that the president of Northwestern unilaterally revoked our agreement without any prior notification, subsequently terminated my employment. He added that he has hired legal counsel to take the necessary steps to protect my rights in accordance with the law. I don't know. In another report in the Daily Northwestern, which is the on-campus newspaper, 3 players alleged that there was a racist culture within the football program. Pat Fitzgerald is the winningest coach in the program's history, and he signed it and agreed to a 10-year contract extension with Northwestern through the 2030 season. This is a huge deal. He's only 48, and this doesn't look good on him. I get that. You're coaching a team, and your program has racism undertones and a negative mindset going through it. That's not good for anybody. That's not good for your brand. That's not good for Northwestern. And to me, he's a casualty of having this happen on his watch. I don't think he is the person that's the most responsible for this. If you have racist players at Northwestern, those players need to be weeded out and they need to be taken off the team. I don't care if they're a 5-star prospect. I don't care who you are. If you are a racist and you are targeting players because of their skin color, you're a piece of shit. Period. End of story. There's difference. To me, there's differences where cancel culture, you just cancel people because people complain and it gets blown out of proportion. The race issue, when it's something to do with race, that's not a cancel culture thing. It's completely because you hate another group. You are picking on somebody because they are different than you, and that is the true definition of hazing, of signaling people out, and being a bigot. If that's true, there's going to be more investigations here. I understand the firing. I understand the logic behind it. But my point of view here is, if you were on a job and you were a boss and you had an employee who was a racist and you didn't know this, because I think people hide themselves pretty well when they need to. Fake it till you make it, or you hide it in front of the people that you need to. We've seen this forever. You know people in your life that you've met that you think you know who they are, but then you don't. Because after a period of time, they come out, but they can hide it for a long period of time, whether it's a friend, whether it's a colleague, what have you. But if you were a project manager on a team and you had somebody who was a racist and he was treating the other employees like crap, and the other employees didn't come talk to you about it, how would you know? That's my roundabout way of discussing this. Is you are the leader of the team, yes, but you have to do your job and you have to delegate jobs to everybody. You're coaching a football team. These schools are so many players. You got to talk to your athletic director. You got to talk to assistant coaches. You got to recruit. It's a fucking mess of a job. There's a lot to do. And you don't know what's happening in your program. But does every boss know what's going on with the culture of their staff? This is different from a small business. You got 4 employees. If you got 50 plus players, practice squad, walk-ons, coaches, recruits, there's a lot happening there. Can that slip through the cracks? I think so. I understand the reasoning, and I'm not even saying I disagree with it per se. They had to do this for public relations. Pat Fitzgerald is getting kicked on the way out, and he is the figurehead for Northwestern's bad culture. And him leaving signals a new era, a new way at Northwestern. Positive vibes at Northwestern. This isn't going to happen again. We got good feelings. We're back. We are Northwestern, this side or the other. So that it signals it's over because he's gone. I don't know if that's true. If those racist players are still playing on the team currently and they're not pointed out, then is it going to change? And it's on this independent investigation to actually do the job this time instead of just giving it lip service and giving him a 2-week suspension in July. That is basically a slap, not even on the wrist. It's a flick on the finger. Pat Fitzgerald will go through the car wash. What I mean by this is he'll get a job with Kirby Smart at Georgia or with Nick Saban at Alabama in a year from now. He'll join their staff as an assistant coach. And in my opinion, in under 3 years, he will be a head coach at a Division I program again. He's 48. He's not done coaching. He's got to deal with the legal battles. But I think he is a head coach of a college football program by the time he's 51 years old. It may not be a huge program, but you'll get another opportunity. Happens to everybody. Urban Meyer would be a head coach right now if he wanted to be. He wants to stay at Fox. John Gruden doesn't want to coach in college. He would be coaching right now. These coaches that have public and worse things than what Pat Fitzgerald is going through right now, they have opportunities. Because if you're good enough at the position, people will hire you. Will there be pushback right away? Sure. He'll have to come out and speak on the culture of his new program and ways he's going to do the job differently. But will he have the opportunity to do that? Yes. Yes. But a bad story at Northwestern, something you don't want to see. You never want to talk about it because it's a negative storyline. But it happens. Pat Fitzgerald is out, and Northwestern will be looking to hire a new coach a month and a half before the start of the new season, while trying to fix their culture of their program. Small NHL story, Philip Zadina I talked about yesterday. He was at a mutual buyout with the Detroit Red Wings. He signed with the San Jose Sharks 1 year, $1.1 million for this upcoming season. I like this signing for San Jose. I think it's low risk. I think Zadina's got everything to gain. He gets to go to a team that isn't very good, so he's going to get opportunities to play. They still have Couture. They still have Tomas Hertl. I think this is a smart decision for him. I think it's a good gamble by San Jose. He was due $4 million over the next 2 years. He turned it down to get the buyout so he could try to get a better opportunity elsewhere, to get more playing time and to improve his career. Takes a lot of guts. Good for him. He clearly believes in himself. And he goes to San Jose on a team that I think he'll be given lots of opportunities. To see what he can do, to see what he's got at the NHL level. He was picked high for a reason. He's got the talent. It's just if he can put it all together. We'll see. Also, it was reported that after DeBrincat was traded, the Ottawa Senators are in contact with Vladimir Tarasenko's agent. So discussing things with him, seeing what's available. Not much new on the trade fronts for Connor Hellebuck. Mark Scheifele is still pretty quiet on what's going to happen in Winnipeg. I think they're both fascinating storylines. I would trade both guys this summer. I still think the team would be in a decent spot going forward. But yes, he has talked to the camp. Talk about Alex Newhook tomorrow. I'll say that for the podcast tomorrow. Looking ahead, next Monday is the NFL. It's the NFL deadline to sign a long-term contract, that being franchise tag. So guys like Saquon Barkley, pass rusher for the Jets. I'm missing a bunch of names. I'll recap that this week before next Monday. There's a number of guys on the franchise tag. Will they sign them? Josh Jacobs with the Las Vegas Raiders. So that deadline is coming up. That's next Monday to agree to a long-term extension, or the player will have to play the year on the tag. Would Saquon Barkley sit out? Would Josh Jacobs sit out because they're not having that security? Victor Wembanyama is done for the rest of Summer League. I like the decision by the Spurs. He looked really good on Sunday night. Greg Popovich also has signed an extension with the Spurs for 5 years. He's 75. My God. Worth $80 million. And point of this, whether he coaches the 5 years or not, all of it is guaranteed. So what a deal for Pop. And this Wembanyama's got his coach for the next little while anyway. And Jeremiah Masoli tore his Achilles in his first game back after returning from a torn ACL for the Ottawa Red Blacks. Just devastating. I was watching the game. You saw him go down. It was a non-contact injury, just the way he moved. He's 34. This very well could be the end of his career. A good quarterback, but injuries have sidelined him. He took a nasty hit last year that was really dirty. And again, just his body's wearing down. The Red Blacks are calling on McLeod Bethel Thompson, who was formerly with the Toronto Argonauts. He reportedly wants to get an NFL opportunity after playing in the USFL. They also lost Tyree Adams, who tore his ACL 2 weeks ago. So Ottawa's in deep trouble again at the quarterback position, not looking good for them for the rest of 2023. So that's what's happening in the world of sports. Tonight, Major League Baseball All-Star Game, really the only thing happening. But we're hoping for more news to talk about tomorrow. We do have a signing in the NHL. I'm going to save that for tomorrow. Alex Newhook and the Montreal Canadiens agreeing to a deal. But I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Any other Northwestern updates we will talk about in the show as well, because I'm invested in it now, and it's interesting and the way these stories progress moving forward. So have a great rest of your Tuesday. Enjoy the tennis. We'll be back tomorrow here on To The Point.